Okay, so today I want to ask you a question that may make some people really uncomfortable. What is a man? Not what should a man do, not what value should a man have. I mean, fundamentally, what makes a boy grow into a man? What are we aiming for? And here's what we know. Our culture literally cannot answer that question anymore. We spent 2 decades tearing down masculinity, defining the majority based upon a minority of men who are not real men, I would say. There's been genuine abuse of masculine strength, real harm done in the name of being a man. I get it. But somewhere along the way, we forgot to rebuild anything. We've deconstructed the house, but never built it again. So now we've got a generation of boys who have no idea what they're supposed to become. And we've got fathers who are terrified to be masculine because they don't want to be toxic. And they also don't know what the alternative looks like. I'm going to tell you what I think happened, and then I'm going to give you a way forward because this matters more than you might realize. When my boys were young, we had this game we called bonking. I'd get down on my knees in the living room, and they'd line up across the room, Ryan first, then Brandon, and even Kaylee, my youngest, and my only daughter would join in. And on my signal, they'd charge at me full speed. Just run and tackle me. We'd wrestle, they'd pile on top of me, count to 3 like they'd pin me in some epic wrestling match. Then I'd pick them up, toss them around, and tickle them until we were all exhausted and laughing. My wife would watch from the kitchen doorway with this look on her face. You know the look. The someone's definitely going to the emergency room look. She'd say, "Someone's going to get hurt." And I'd say, "Yeah, me." But here's what actually was happening in those moments. My sons were learning that they could be physical without being violent, that strength could be playful, that their masculine energy, this thing inside them that wanted to run and crash and compete, that wasn't bad. It was good. It just needed direction. And my daughter was learning that masculine strength could be safe, that a man's power could protect her, catch her, make her feel secure instead of threatened. Now, some parents, mostly moms, will inevitably mention that's normalizing violence or start talking about gender stereotypes. And I'm thinking, we weren't normalizing violence. We were channeling energy, and there's a massive difference. But this is where we are. We've pathologized boyhood itself. Little boys want to move, to compete, to test their strength. And instead of teaching them how to direct that energy toward good purposes, we just try to suppress it. Sit still, stop being so rough, be more like your sister. And then we wonder why boys are falling behind in school, why young men are directionless, why we're seeing this epidemic of failure to launch. Here's what I've come to understand. There are basically 3 ways masculinity is playing out in our culture right now, and only one of them is actually healthy. The first is what everybody's talking about, toxic masculinity. And it's real. I've seen it. This is the guy who uses his strength to dominate instead of protect, who treats women like possessions, who thinks emotions are weakness and vulnerability is shameful, who leads by bullying instead of serving. That's toxic. And fathers absolutely need to reject it. But then there's this other path that almost nobody talks about, and it's just as destructive. I call it abandoned masculinity. This is the man who's so afraid of being toxic that he abandons masculine traits entirely. He never initiates anything. He defers every decision to his wife. He avoids all conflict. He won't discipline his kids because he wants to be the fun parent. He's more concerned with being liked than being respected. And I've watched what this does to kids. Sons grow up with no model of masculine initiative. They don't know what it looks like for a man to make a hard decision, to step into conflict when necessary, to lead by going first into difficult places. Daughters then grow up with no experience of masculine leadership. And here's what's tragic. They often end up marrying either passive men and being frustrated with their marriage. In that situation, they end up leading the family in all ways, or they swing completely the other direction and choose domineering men because at least that feels like strength. Both paths fail our kids. Toxic masculinity abuses strength. Abandoned masculinity refuses to use strength at all. But there's a third way. We might call it authentic masculinity. But really, it's just biblical masculinity. It's what we see in Jesus. Think about Jesus for a minute. This is the guy who wept openly at his friend's tomb, who washed his disciples' feet, who let children climb all over him. But this is also the guy who walked into the temple and started flipping tables and driving people out with a whip, who told the Pharisees they were whitewashed tombs, sons of vipers, who walked willingly toward the cross knowing exactly what was coming. He was tender and fierce, gentle and bold, a servant and a king, and that integration, not the elimination of either side, that's what our sons need to see. Now, some people hear this and think I'm just pushing traditional gender roles or whatever. So let me give you some actual research, because this isn't about my opinion. Dr. Daniel Paquette at the University of Montreal has done extensive research on how mothers and fathers parent differently. And what he found is fascinating. Mothers tend toward what he calls security parenting, providing comfort, protection, emotional safety. Fathers tend toward activation parenting, encouraging exploration, risk-taking, pushing boundaries. And here's the key. Children need both. Security without activation creates timid kids who never learn to handle challenge. Activation without security creates reckless kids who don't know when to pull back. You need both. But we've spent the last 20 years acting like activation parenting is dangerous, like encouraging risk is bad parenting. And in the process, we've pressured fathers to parent exactly like mothers, which means kids are losing something they desperately need. There's also this research from Dr. Paul Amato at Penn State and Dr. Kyle Pruitt at Yale on father involvement. And the findings are overwhelming. Kids with involved fathers show better academic performance, fewer behavioral problems, better emotional regulation, lower rates of getting into serious trouble as teenagers. And this holds true even when you control for income and education. It's not just that dads provide resources. They provide something through their presence that can't be replaced. So what happens when we try to eliminate distinctly masculine fathering? When we tell dads that they're replaceable and they need to parent exactly like moms? Well, when we pathologize roughhousing and risk-taking, we rob boys of the experiences that actually form masculine identity. Boys need to learn how to handle strength. And I don't just mean physical strength, though that's part of it. They've got this energy, this drive to compete, to test themselves, to push limits. That's not cultural conditioning, that's biology. And they need fathers to show them how to channel it toward good purposes instead of just suppressing it. Wrestling with your sons, playing sports together, teaching them to use tools and build things, these aren't just fun activities. They're showing boys that their masculine energy isn't bad, it's good. It just needs direction. The difference between being violent and being strong, between being aggressive and being assertive, between using your strength to dominate and using it to protect. Boys also need to learn how to treat women. And here's the uncomfortable truth. They learn this primarily by watching how their father treats their mother, not by what you say in some awkward conversation, by what they see in you every single day. The way you speak to your wife becomes their template for how men speak to women. If you interrupt her constantly, they learn that men's voices matter more. If you serve her, if you honor her, if you make decisions together and treat her as a genuine partner, they learn what Ephesians 5 actually means when it says, "Love your wives as Christ loved the church." Boys also need to see masculine resilience. Not never fail, but instead get back up. I've made plenty of mistakes as a father. But when you mess up and then you go to your sons and say, "I was wrong about how I handled that. I'm sorry. Will you forgive me?" You're showing them that real men take responsibility for their failures. That strength includes the ability to admit when you're wrong. And maybe most importantly, boys need to see what makes a man stand up. When do you turn the other cheek? Or when do you flip the tables? What causes are worth sacrifice? What's the difference between fighting for your ego and fighting for what's right? This is where courage and masculinity intersect in really powerful ways. So there are 4 types of courage kids need to develop. First, risk-taking courage, trying new things despite being scared. Persistence courage, keeping going when you want to quit. Moral courage, doing the right thing even when it costs you. And then spiritual courage, standing for your faith when culture is pulling you the other direction. Boys especially need fathers to cultivate these through masculine modeling. Let me give you an example. My son Brandon, when he was in middle school, decided he wanted to really improve his basketball game. This was the summer before his 8th grade year. He set all these goals for himself, running drills in the driveway, working on his vertical leap, going to this private training once a week. And he did this, but I could see the weariness in him after a few weeks. He never said he wanted to quit, but I could tell he was tired of the grind. I didn't rescue him from it. I didn't say, hey, buddy, it's okay if you want to stop, but I also didn't ignore what he was going through. I remember one Sunday afternoon driving in the car to go to private training. I could see he was tired, maybe just physically tired that day or tired of the training. This is something he wanted to do over the summer, not something I was pushing on him. So I knew that there would be quitting points. There always is with all of us. So in the car, I said, hey, buddy, I know it's not always fun to go. I see how hard you're working. You're doing things most boys aren't doing this summer. This is tough, I know, but it's going to pay off. And guess what? It did. When the season came, he was ready. He'd improved significantly, and he was glad he did. And more importantly, he learned that he could set a hard goal and push through the discomfort to achieve it. That's the kind of masculine persistence boys need to develop. But here's the key. Fathers have to be willing to watch their sons struggle. That's hard. Every instinct wants to step in and make it easier. But sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stand beside them while they push through something difficult. If they don't push through hard things, they're never going to discover what they're capable of. Now, I need to say something quickly to those of you with daughters because this matters just as much. Let's apply this to your little girl. Dr. Meg Meeker wrote this in her book, Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters, which, by the way, is a great book you should get. She said your daughter's relationship with you is the single most important relationship she will have with a man. Wow. That's not an overstatement. I mean, think about it. You are her first experience of male love. How you love her shapes what she'll accept from other men later. If you're distant, she'll spend her life chasing unavailable men. If you're critical, she'll accept men who tear her down. If you're warm and present and pursuing, she'll expect that. You're setting her standard, making it high. When daughters wrestle with their dads, when they jump and get caught, when they feel their father's strength holding them up, protecting them, they're learning that masculine strength can be safe, that a man's power can make them feel secure instead of threatened. That matters more than you realize because there are a lot of women who grow up afraid of masculine strength because the first man they knew used his strength to hurt, not to protect. Don't let your daughter be one of them. So what does this actually look like this week? I'm talking this week. Well, if a man is anything, he's an initiator. He's a leader. That means he takes responsibility and then acts. So let me give you 3 things. I call it the initiation challenge because the key word is initiate. Don't wait for your kids to come to you. Don't wait for your wife to tell you what to do. Step up and lead. So first, physical presence. Initiate some kind of rough play, a physical activity, or teach a hands-on skill. Maybe it's wrestling. Maybe it's shooting hoops. Maybe it's teaching your son to change a tire or build something. The point is, masculine fathers don't just sit on the couch. They get their kids moving. So come up with some physical activity and do it this week. Not watch some physical activity like watching a football game on TV, but doing it together. Go throw the football together. Second, emotional pursuit. This one's harder for a lot of us. Don't wait for your child to come to talk to you about what's bothering them or what's going on with them. Friday night, say, hey, let's get in the car. We're going for a drive. So go get burgers or ice cream and then ask, what's really going on with you lately? And then, this is the hard part, don't let them blow you off with nothing. Press in gently but firmly. Hey, I'm your dad. I can tell when something's up. You don't have to tell me everything, but I need to know you're okay. Or you emotionally pursue by initiating love. Say to your child this week, I love being your dad. I'm really glad God gave you to me. If your child is little, get on your knees, look them in the eye, and say these things to them. When we get so busy initiating discipline, we don't initiate love toward them. So do that this week. And third, give sacrificial service. Do something costly for your family that nobody asked you to do. Take on the hard task. Get up early and handle the thing everybody was dreading. Absorb the inconvenience. Go last in some way. Put them before you. Let them see that masculine strength exists to serve, not to be served. Maybe it's coming home from work exhausted and seeing that your wife has had a brutal day too, and instead of collapsing on the couch, you say, hey, I've got this. Go take a bath, go read a book, do something. I'll handle bedtime. When what you really wanted to do was zone out, you serve her. Maybe it's canceling your golf plans on Saturday to take the kids to the park for 3 hours. Let them see that sacrifice from you. Surprise your family in some way this week. So here's what we need to hear. Our culture can't tell you how to raise boys to become men because it refuses to define what a man is. But you don't have to be held hostage to that confusion. Look to Jesus. Look at how he integrated strength and tenderness, courage and compassion, boldness and humility. That's your model, not the toxic caricature, not the passive abdication, the real thing. Your sons are watching you right now. They're learning what masculinity looks like by watching you. They're discovering whether masculine strength can be trusted by experiencing yours. They're forming their understanding of what men are for by observing what you do with your strength. And your daughters are watching too. They're learning what to expect from men, what kind of treatment to accept and what to reject, what a good man actually looks like. So be strong, be gentle, be present, initiate, protect, serve, sacrifice. The world needs real men, the kind who embody honor and courage and servant leadership, the kind who protect the vulnerable and stand for what's right even when it costs them everything. Your kids need to see that kind of man. And here's the beautiful, terrifying truth. They're looking at you to show them what that looks like. So don't let our culture's confusion rob them of what they desperately need. Now, this week, go be the father friend God called you to be. And by the way, how do we define a man? Here it is. A man is a male human, male at birth, who becomes a male adult who uses his strength to lead, protect, and serve. That's it.